was asking after you.
Yeah, because you're talking about, the lion last time and whether it was safe to desire to protect yourself. And I found a reading or a sutta where Buddha talks about that in a way. Indirectly, it's very mild compared to that. It's a circus performer and his assistant she has to stand on his shoulders, and they have a long pole, and she's asking him if this, and she goes up and she gets down again, and they talk about whether it was safe to do that. And he says that it's safe. It is safe. It's safe if you protect yourself, you protect others, and if you protect others, you protect yourself. And it's in that, sort of mundane sense of just, literally protecting yourself. But then he goes on to say, and it is with the Dhamma. If you meditate and you practice the Dhamma, you are protecting yourself, and then that is helping you protect others. And if you are protecting others, then you're going to protect yourself too. So it's also in that metaphysical sense, or in the sense of the Dhamma as well.
This is it's such an interesting and subtle point where the eye making isn't something like that. Thank you for that, Kevin. I remember that sutta too. I can't think of the name of it. One of the senior monks throughout the Buddha's career was Mahakassapa. He was probably considered the third most senior monk as far as understanding. Sariputta would be one of the other ones, and Moggallana. These are all monks that came into the Buddha's life very early after his awakening, very soon after his awakening, were there for most of his life. Kassapa ended up outliving the Buddha and Sariputta and Moggallana. Anyway, the relation to that is that Kassapa was not one that wanted to live in with the Sangha. He liked his seclusion, and so he lived out in the forest, but he stayed in constant contact with the Buddha. And he did what the Buddha asked him. Every now and then the Buddha would say, I need you to go out and meet with these people. They have a wrong understanding of the Dhamma. You're the one that can straighten them out. But Kassapa's big thing was to always live with the highest level of integrity, because he noticed that because of his position, people watched everything that he did. And if they want to be like him, they'll emulate him. So he was very, very careful that he didn't do anything that people might emulate that could hurt them. And so in that way, that relates to that, in taking care of himself, but from an awakened point of view. Now you could say, well, isn't that eye making that he's considering what he might do to other people? But it's from an awakened point of view. It's from an awakened mind. So it's free of eye making. It's free of causing difficulty. The eye making comes in when it's me doing the saving, when I have to do something. And that's what the Buddha referred to when he said, when I was an unawakened bodhisattva or bodhisattva. And that's the difference between a human being who is imbued with great compassion, which is what a bodhisattva or a bodhisattva is, and an awakened human being who can actually make a difference in that person's life and in the world in general. The actions might look the same. The only way that an individual would know is because they know that they're awakened. That's why the Buddha always said, it's not for me to say, yes, you're awakened. No, you're not. You need to do this. You need to do that. This is what's missing. Not even though the Buddha would say, this is how you fine tune your practice. It's an individual's responsibility. And now this relates directly to karma, to take to the Dhamma and awaken and be mindful of conditioned thinking that would rise up and say, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Let me find a way that this doesn't fit. And then I know that this isn't even worth following anymore, rather than having the experience of allowing it to work, or allowing the experience of having it work in your life. So that's where that we can get caught in. Is it self-referential compassion, or am I acting out of a sense of true compassion? The only way to know is when you let go of all eye making. Okay, so karma. I'm sorry, did you have something you want to say?
I made a quiche this afternoon.
Oh.
And it was done. And I was thinking, I should just bring that to John tonight. he might appreciate it. And then something said, that's an eye making, don't do that. And I just kept going because I knew I was late. And this is backing up just a little bit. I'm doing acupuncture with Matt, and that sleeping and resting that I need to do for my Achilles heel is erratic. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I mean, it's just. But right now I have the time to do all this. So anyway, and I've missed a lot of the meditation things and stuff like that. But I've just been really, I read the thing today on the karma, and I thought, no, I just need to keep going. And so I came.
You're going to go hungry.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here for two reasons.
What?
Well, you, but most importantly, that quiche.
I didn't bring it.
Oh, I was kidding.
Well, because if I stop to take it and wrap it,
I understand that.
I'll bring it on Saturday.
You see, now you're creating. Now I'm stuck in the future.
No, my point is that what I'm beginning to find a little bit is that a lot of the conditioned thinking that I've had is being replaced by, like, this is maybe a wrong word, but it's almost like an intuitive, I'm going to do this now kind of a thing. This is what I need to do, or this is what I don't need to do. But it's not a conscious thing like eye making is. Eye making is, I'm really conscious when I make.
Yeah, well, you're understanding, and that intuitive response to life now is part of is what happens when you start integrating the Eightfold Path. It just flows naturally from a developing right view. You know, it's and that's exactly how it should be. From the standpoint of a self-referential ego self, this is maybe another way of saying that what I've been saying for a long, long time, but it's important to come at this in different ways. From the point of view of a self-referential ego self, Anguttara will engage in the Dhamma in this way. It will insist on bringing its wrong views, which are the problem, into whatever it's learning and adapting whatever's new to fit those views. That's the problem with wrong views and the problem with ignorance. Ignorance insists on continuing to ignore its own ignorance, and that's how it does it. No matter what's occurring in the world, it has to fit in with this view. Democrats are always Democrats and they're always right. Republicans are always, wait a minute, Diane, I'm making a point. It's an important one. Whatever we're holding in mind is what's going to determine the experience of what is coming into our life too. And we'll filter it through that view. So Trump is always wrong from one point of view. I'm just using these as an example, by the way. I'm not getting into politics. And from another point of view, Obama is always wrong. And these two individuals, mature, semi-mature human beings, looking at the exact same people, insist that one is the devil and one is the God. And then you ask another person, and the God's the devil and the devil's the God. How can that be? How can human beings see things? Because they're confused. And so a self-referential ego self needs to adapt or accommodate or embellish anything that comes in and make it fit its view, rather than recognize the view that I'm holding is a wrong view. Let me let go of the view completely, and then I can see things anew. And this also relates to karma, because karma is a present moment unfolding of past intentional actions moderated by the present level of our mindfulness, meaning what we're holding in mind. And if in the present moment our mindfulness is framed by the Eightfold Path, then we will be diminishing our conditioned thinking, meaning that we're diminishing our karma. We're moving it towards cessation, towards a place where we will be free of wrong views. And then whatever comes into our lives is simply useful from a Dhamma perspective, because we're seeing it clearly. But we have to begin where we are, and we have to accept the fact that the views that got us here It's not the views that got us here. The views that I've been carrying my whole life, that have been creating disappointing and confusing experience, are such because they're wrong views. Life itself is not confusing. It's because of my reaction and my wrong view that makes it confusing and prone to suffering. But it all has to do with my thinking. Well, I wanted to start the class by asking, Kevin, what is your, briefly, an understanding of karma?
Well, from what I've read here, it's karma is action. Karma is how you act or react in the world, and karma is. And I've read it so many times, and you just said it, but it's the action that you take, depending upon your view of the world and your understanding of the Dhamma, or your present state of mind, or past actions that are moderated by the present state of mind.
Yes.
We're going for it. I can never remember exactly how to say it.
I'll say it again. It's a present moment unfolding of past intentional actions moderated by the present level of mindfulness, which means that if the present level of mindfulness has no concept of the Dhamma, the momentum of karma is just going to continue to provide the energetic for continued ignorance. That's what karma is. Another word for karma could be ignorance. It could be dukkha. It could be anatta. It could be the 5 clinging aggregates, because it's all describing the personal experience of suffering. Karma is simply a word that has, the Buddha used the word karma, which was a common word in his time among religious and spiritual people. But the Buddha used the common word. We use common words because we communicate. People know what we're referring to. When I say dog, most people know what a dog is. When the Buddha was using the word karma, though, he was using it in such a unique and skillful and refined way that it basically contradicted everybody else's beliefs in karma. But the Buddha had the courage of going out into the world and saying, basically, this is what I understand, and the way you understand it is not correct. If you want to understand it correctly, here's how to do that. And it's not just agreeing with another human being, like most people did at the time. A person would have stature, they would say something, they'd say, the world is made of Swiss cheese. That guy's got stature, I'm going to follow him. And so you believe that the world is made of Swiss cheese because of what someone else is saying. If you had the experience and you bit into the earth, you know it's not Swiss cheese. You have your own understanding of it. The Buddha taught that way. He taught you to have your own understanding, and he taught that karma is a personal thing. It's not part of some grand scheme. Karma is an entirely personal experience of your own life as your life unfolds. And it's simply describing the momentum caused by your own behavior. Diane, what is your brief explanation of karma, if you'd like to give it?
I read it.
Pardon me?
I read the lesson.
Yes. What did you get out of it?
Ceasing to cling, crave, and ignorance. And if you don't do that anymore, then you don't have karma.
That's it. We're good. We're done for tonight. We're good to go.
Did I get a star?
Yep. The Buddha's words. I am the owner of my actions. I am the heir to my actions. I am born of my actions and related through my actions. Related to what? Related to the actions. The relation in that word is it could have been clinging to my actions. I'm creating an identity. I'm joined by my actions. That's karma. That's my, I often say, if you want to know what your karma is, look in the mirror. Examine your life. It's your karma. Be willing to look at it. My actions will determine the fortune or misfortune in my life. You could say that last line is the whole Dhamma too. There's the virtuous aspect, right speech, right action, right livelihood, often seen as moral aspects, are often called that. I call them that sometimes. And that's another reason why what the Buddha taught is confused with religion, because most religions teach morality. But the religions teach morality as a way mostly of gaining favor with this spiritual system or creator God, or to better themselves in the future, usually in a future life. The Buddha wasn't concerned at all about future lives except to not have them. He wanted to bring that cycle. That was a whole, any future life is an opportunity for more suffering. It's not something that we want to keep going. But that last line, My actions will determine the fortune or misfortune in my life. Whatever I do has an action, but not because I'm putting something out and it's bouncing back at me. It's because in my mind, I'm creating conditions for further reactions based on life unfolding in a similar way. In other words, something occurs in my life and I react to it poorly. I create an imprint in my mind and a fabrication about a certain situation. A few days later, something else happens and I flow off the handle. I can't understand why. It's because my mind is reacting to the stress of what I didn't deal with in the first place. I didn't deal with skillfully. And I keep creating a conditioned layer upon conditioned layer of my mind that drives my behavior. And oftentimes I get to the point where I don't even understand why I'm acting in a certain way. Why did I react that way? Or I'm surprised at my own reaction. And there was times when I acted out in such frustration and really anger. And I had to look back, like, where did that come from? Why did I act that way? Because of my own conditioned thinking. In that moment of reaction, we have in effect lost our minds. We're acting in a mindless way. And the Buddha teaches the Eightfold Path so that we can gain control of our thinking and so gain control of our behavior. As we gain control of our behavior, as we're mindful of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we're able to moderate our behavior and bring it into the framework of the Eightfold Path. And then, referring to this line, our lives become most fortunate because we gain awakening. I'm going to jump around a little bit and just read some quotes and then comment a little bit on them. The Buddha's words. Whatever one continues to pursue with their thinking becomes the inclination of their awareness. Another one sentence that describes the whole Dhamma. When you understand the right context, whatever one continues to pursue with their thinking becomes the inclination of their awareness. Now think of people that become compulsive about something and they get to the point where that's all that they can focus on. That's what the Buddha is describing here. But we do that with all types of things. We don't just have to be addictive or compulsive personalities to get compulsive with our thinking. I'm going to read it once more because it's so important. Whatever one continues to pursue with their thinking becomes the inclination of their awareness. Now, there's another clue there. Now, the Buddha's teaching us, he's not so concerned about us pursuing ignorance, except he wants us to recognize that and stop. The clue there is if we incline our minds towards the Dhamma, that will direct us towards that awareness. Whatever we incline our minds to, whatever we hold in mind. That's the essence of mindfulness. So the Buddha taught a very simple set of principles known as an Eightfold Path to hold in mind and transform our life. The problem is when we start becoming framed by this Eightfold Path, and that the framework of the Eightfold Path is shining a light on things that we've been holding on to our whole life, most of them just views of the world, that's where we start getting in trouble. When we start trying to adapt the Eightfold Path to allow for that view to exist in my mind. And that's where we get into trouble. And so we start modifying and compromising the Dhamma to allow us to continue wrong view. And we can spend endless eons in that pursuit. And there's stories, not everyone that heard the Buddha teach awakened either. But later on, as people started awakening, use Kassapa as an example, or Sariputta, the Buddha would be aware of this, and he would direct one of the senior monks or nuns to this particular person to explain to them where their confused and deluded thinking was. It wasn't something that was just accepted or the individual allowed to have ownership of their wrong views. If you came to the Buddha, he assumed the responsibility of taking you from wrong view to right view, which means sometimes there was some prodding, sometimes there was some direct talk. But the whole point was to be determined enough and fearless enough to actually awaken, to engage in the Eightfold Path. Whatever one continues, because the fourth time I'm reading this, whatever one continues to pursue with their thinking becomes the inclination of the awareness. The entire Dhamma is to change our thinking incline towards awakening. Being mindful of right intention and abandoning thinking imbued with craving, clinging, and sensuality inclines the mind towards release. Is that what you were talking about before? That line? No? The Buddha continues, karma should be understood correctly. This is an interesting line to me, because I spent a lot of years in the Mahayana schools, and the treatment of karma is either dismissive, like you don't worry about it. It's an archaic term, or it's overemphasized to motivate you to do things that are really outside of the Dhamma, but meaning a lot of rites and rituals and merit gaining and all that stuff. And that has nothing to do with what the Buddha is talking. Karma should be understood correctly. That's why the Buddha taught it, because it's so important to understand why we can't just decide to think differently and automatically have it happen. Why can't we do that? Why can't I decide in this moment that most of my beliefs that I've had up to this moment have caused me nothing but grief? I just want to be rid of them. Why can't I have that control of my thinking? I should be able to, shouldn't I? It's my mind. Why can't I think what I want to think? Why do I have to be stuck in views that I no longer want to have? Because of conditioned thinking. Because I need a framework of recognizing how that arises in my life and how to abandon it. I need a well-concentrated mind, because a distracted mind is unable to address that problem of ignorance. In fact, it's the reason why it creates its distraction in its own mind. It's the problem of a confused and deluded mind. It's that constant distraction. The diversity of the results of karma should be understood. Another interesting line of diversity. It means that the result of our past intentional actions, unless we have a established framework of the Eightfold Path, the uprising of our karma could happen anywhere, in any situation. And it's not something that we could even figure out. It's foolish to say, oh, I got a blowout on the road the other day, and I ran off the road a little bit. Well, that's just an example of bad karma. And it's because I gave a bad look to that guy the other day. Well, look at the whole eye making that would hold that scenario in mind. Rather than not taking the blowout seriously, except to understand that when you drive a car, sometimes tires blow out, period. There's no other explanation for that, except that's what occurred. That's a mindful way of looking at it. The diversity of the results of karma. And when we start trying to, this is why we need an Eightfold Path, because if we start trying to identify karma unfolding in each and every moment, it's just another distraction. When the Buddha says the diversity of karma should be known, it means that it can happen anywhere. Don't get distracted by things arising and passing away. That's the whole point of the Dhamma. The diversity of karma should be known. Cessation of karma should be understood, and the path developing the cessation of karma should also be understood, the Eightfold Path. We should actually understand the cessation of karma. What does it mean? It means that I have now developed the Eightfold Path to the point where I am no longer reacting to life. I'm simply present with my life. And so no more karma will be developed. There will be no more momentum driving an agitated mind. The only momentum left is that mind that is now striving towards full liberation or full awakening. And that's something that has been said, that motivation towards full liberation has been something that we have karmically developed the whole time we're engaged in the Dhamma. And that's what carries us through. Once we get, there's a point that everyone has to come to, whether you awaken 5 minutes after you've heard the Dharma or 45 years later, like Ananda. There's a point of jumping off where we have to, we're not taking anything on faith, but we're saying, I have now developed the Dhamma to the point that I can trust myself in the Dhamma to continue. But that's also often felt as a fearful or a very stressful point until we accept it completely, until we understand. And you said this before, Diane, when you said, I'm just going to go. The Dhamma is here for me to practice. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to continue with it, no matter how I feel in the present moment, because I understand that the diversity of karma must be understood. I understand in this moment. Boy, am I talking fast tonight. And I didn't have any caffeine at all today. The diversity of karma should be understood means that as it's arising, as I find that my mind is becoming agitated, it's at that moment. Remember, we talked about practicing restraint. At that moment that I must practice restraint if I'm going to diminish and ultimately bring to cessation the results of my past actions, my past wrong views. Is that clear?
Hmm.
Any questions about where we've gone so far in my fast talking?
I had a question in there somewhere about, so I want to say something like, if for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, consequences, there's consequences for everything you do. What I'm hearing that say is that the karma is saying is just to accept in a moment. It's not, I mean, the tire blowing out, maybe because it ran over a piece of glass, which would be a consequential action. But
What do you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm not following you. What do you mean a consequential action? The glass.
The glass running, the tire running over the glass caused the blow up.
Okay. Yep.
Which would be not karmic. Is that a word?
Yep. It's
at
just
all.
Yep.
And if I look at it that way, then you see where I'm going?
Yes. So karma doesn't happen out there. It happens in here. Karma is our experience of it's our experience of our experience. It's our reaction to what's happening in life. It's not the event itself. That was a good example too. The glass has nothing to do with karma. It was just glass in the road.
It is
period.
So
I'm driving down the road and I hit that piece of glass. It blows my tire out and I fall off. I go off the road, and I'm at peace because I understand what happened. Now, the alternative is blaming somebody for throwing that bottle out of the car. And that blame, the aggravation and the frustration, and they should arrest that, blah, 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 comes from my conditioned mind. It's not a rational response, is it? But many people will go to that. They'll try to find blame, or they might blame themselves for driving too far on the right side of the road. All these things that happen from a conditioned mind, rather than just simply having a blowout and going on with your life. It doesn't mean you love it. It just simply means you have again, I'm using a simple and maybe too mundane of an example, but it's just life occurring.
They're not saying, well, that happened to me because I was a bad person before. Something that happened.
Yes, which is how people refer to karma. Yep.
Payback.
Yep, and they'll apply that in all sorts of ways. Like, I got an awful disease. Well, that's my karma. Well, it's not your karma. Maybe you smoke too much, but it's not karma. It's smoking that caused your lung cancer, not karma. It's not some overarching system that created it. It's your direct action. There's no mystery in why you're sick. There's no mystery in any of it, really. It's just life unfolding. And let me go a little bit further.
It's interesting.
Please.
Reading the chapter and then I just repeated it, just the way the Buddha substituted dukkha and karma and the Four Noble Truths, and it's the same phraseology and the same concepts, and it's karma and dukkha, and
yep,
it's the same thing. I mean, in a way.
It is. You could say karma, anatta, not self-characteristic, 5 clinging aggregates, not self, and dukkha covers all of that. Dukkha is the description of all of dukkha. Is a description of karma. It's a description of 5 clinging aggregates, a description of anatta. And because of, remember where we started, where we were 5 weeks ago, we started with the impermanence, not self, and the dukkha. The impermanence is within karma. If it wasn't for impermanence, there could be no such teaching like the Buddha taught of karma, because karma relies on everything changing moment by moment, doesn't it? If things weren't impermanent, if things were set in stone, if our life and death and understanding and everything was all part of what people see as karma, we would simply be automatons. There'd be no opportunity to awaken from that belief of reward and punishment. Of course, that's what the Buddha realized too. And he pondered this because that was something that he was initially taught. And he realized that can't possibly be true. The reason why, and this relates a little bit towards getting into rebirth, the reason why that idea of reward and punishment, and as a grand spiritual behavior modification system, meaning if there's enough people do wrong, I'll make them suffer, or the system makes them suffer. They'll learn to be different people. It's behavior. It's basic behavior modification. You know, Pavlov's dog. The Buddha realized that what a ridiculous thought that could be, knowing what I know now, which is that I am responsible for what I think and what I experience and how my life unfolds. And so if I can find a way to gain control of my thinking, then I can gain control of my karma. Karma is thinking. Karma is not happening out there. It's happening right in here. Diane.
That is so huge it's beginning, or what, I don't know whether huge is the word or not, but in the lesson there was something about people doing good karma to get good karma,
yep.
Stuff. And man, my mind just really took off with that of, doing good works and, I just, all that mm-hmm. stuff. And then it trickled into, with the eye making that was in there, it trickled into a person with conditioned thinking and an eye making tendency could begin to manipulate other people through good karmic actions.
Could. It would. You're deluded, yes.
Exactly. And this, to me, that was a proof of ignorance for me. A
that's right.
Of my God. I grew up really naive, and it took the world to it's still taking the world to teach me a lot of stuff. But I thought when people were kind, they were kind, and that isn't always the truth. And people do have ulterior motives, and living.
Well, even if it's just even in that compassionate bodhisattva, even if it's just to show how wonderful I am in your own mind. I'm not saying that you even need to portray that out in the world, but it's so important to your own self-image that I am the world's most compassionate being. And so you're driven to constant compassion, but it's out of eye making. It's not out of true understanding. And that is the problem. It's I always think of the examples of like the Crusades and these religious jihads. The people believe that what they're doing is right. They're doing it actually from a deluded place of compassion. They think that they're saving souls. But all of those type, and those are extreme examples, but there's very, very unseen but subtle levels of that are occurring constantly in our society that are the fundamental. Let me use the strong word because it's what came in there. That's the fundamental cancer, because like cancer, it can't be seen for a long time until it really shows itself. And that false compassion keeps everybody in a state of agitation and a state of wrong intention. And so this is maybe my frustration with modern Buddhism. Most of modern Buddhism is presented this way: to do good and create good merit. So in the future, you'll have a favorable life. And of course, you can do that, and you can live a life that way, but it's not anything that the Buddha taught. And again, there's my frustration. It doesn't concern me if people want to live their life based on that belief. But if you come to something called Buddhism, you should understand it's not that. There's a way of bringing karma to cessation. The Buddha taught it. It's the whole point. And it can be done right now. It does not have to take endless eons. There's no rituals. There's no merit, except the only merit the Buddha taught was the merit gained by developing the Eightfold Path, period. This is one of the most important parts of this teaching here. The Buddha continues, intention is karma. With intention, one does karma through thought, word, and deed. One does karma. We're creating what's karma is, in this sense, it's the next moment unfolding. We are creating the next moment in our life and our experience of it based on our thoughts, words, and deeds. Look at the direction, the clear direction the Buddha is giving here is often lost, but he's saying this is what you need to look at. Look at your thoughts, your words, and how many times do you hear me come back to it? Because that's what the Buddha is teaching. Look at, if you want to understand the state of your mindfulness, the state of your understanding, look at your actions, look at the words you're using, and then look at your thoughts. And it's usually in that kind of reverse way that we start engaging the Dhamma. Most people will first notice their unskillful actions and then maybe the speech that follows it. And then they'll start developing enough concentration that they can look at their thoughts. Diane.
Getting here tonight, to me, is a perfect example of what you're talking about. Because through my mind, I've been really becoming aware of people pleasing. And that's bone marrow deep in me, to please my parents, please my family, please people. And when I started not pleasing everyone all of the time, I got a lot of grief. So, but it's like endometriosis. It's entangled in my cells somewhat still. And so when I was leaving tonight, I thought, am I people pleasing? No. And this is why I bring this up. A deeper conditioned thinking was, I got to be on time. I can't be late. I can't be late. I can't be late. And so that's why I left the keys at home. But you see the entanglement of my mind, and I'm still going through that, and I just poofed it all and said, I'm just gonna go. I'm getting too complicated here, kind of a thing. And then, there was also that I don't know whether he wants it. I don't know. I haven't tasted it yet. I don't know what it's like. There was all those kind of stuff. Insecure stuff.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Yeah. You're learning a lot, though. Now I got to go back just to put that into context. Intention is karma. With intention, one does karma through thought, word, and deed. And what is the cause that initiates karma? What is the cause that initiates karma?
I'm making.
Close.
Is it contact?
Hey.
That's right.
Yeah, you're getting Diane's star. Both get stars. Contact. Now think about what we now know of karma, truly, and how would we engage with our karma? We're psychophysical beings. It's through contact. Remember even the conditioned thinking or concentration or what's the right word? Can't think of it. The five physical senses and our consciousness. It's hard for us to see consciousness or ongoing thinking as a thing, but it is. It's part of the sixth sense space. It's part of contact. And so if my consciousness is confused and diluted, rooted in wrong view, as I come in contact with, as the world comes in contact with me through my senses, and I react because of that. Remember the Buddha talks about eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose, etc., nose consciousness. What he's saying, there's not a little consciousness in my nose, but what he's saying is that our senses have their own way of interpreting things. In other words, what comes through my nose is backed up by my thinking. And so if my thinking is confused, what comes through my nose is going to be experienced as confused, won't it? It can't be any other way, because the interpretive portion of who I am is rooted in the wrong view. So it can only interpret things from that point of view, from that way of conditioned thinking. Is that clear? That's the essence of karma. And so what I need to do, according to the Buddha, is to have enough, to be well concentrated enough to hold the refined mindfulness, to respond appropriately to life as life occurs, rather than react from a conditioned mind. And if I can do that at the point of contact, practicing that mindful restraint, I will bring to cessation karma. As with the entire Buddha's teaching, it only applies to our life as our life unfolds. Now, that doesn't, which is everything. Now, people will take that to an extreme. What do you mean? I mean, we can only practice the Dhamma when we've, no, but it's working on us as we're deepening the Eightfold Path. Let me put it this way, because this is an important point. As we're sitting in meditation and we're caught up in our thoughts and we come back to the sensation of breathing, and even if it's just for that brief moment, we feel a little peace. We're clear. We're spacious. It's in that moment that we're integrating the Dhamma. And the next moment, I'm thinking about having that blowout yesterday and who to blame. And so I'm out of the Dhamma. But during this process, I can come back to the Dhamma. And I'm now integrating the Dhamma again. So it's a gradual thing for most people, unless we're Khandana. But within, and this has to do with understanding the 3 marks of existence, it's within dukkha and within impermanence and within wrong view, anatta, that we're able to awaken. How can that be? How can we be in the soup of delusion and get out of it? Eightfold Path. It's the ladder out of the pot. You know, it's the way of, again, the way of ending karma. The path developing the cessation of karma should be understood. The Buddha could not say that more emphatically, or he couldn't overestimate the importance of that one line. The Eightfold Path should be understood. What else did he teach? Nothing, really. I mean, he spent 45 years, 84,000 discourses teaching how to apply the Eightfold Path into your life to develop understanding of 4 noble truths, which means you have now brought ignorance to cessation, you brought karma to cessation. Diane.
Well, it's just, the whole thing is experiential.
Yeah,
What I was thinking, like when you were talking about the nose, I was thinking, I haven't smelt it in a long time, but whenever I would smell Old Spice aftershave on someone, I remembered a high school sweetheart, and then I remembered this guy in college that I sat next to, sat behind me or somewhere, and that for a long time. And when that came up in meditation, and when things like that, no smells or whatever comes up in meditation, and I experience it and feel the feeling, then I can let it go. And then if I were to smell Old Spice again, I wouldn't have to go through all of the memories that were connected with this whole situation. I would just maybe have a flash of the person in high school and the kid in college. But I mean, to me, that's where I'm seeing the integration of the whole thing. And through meditation, I mean, they're all connected. The intentions and the nose and the feelings and the contact and everything like that.
Yeah, it's all part of the Dhamma.
That guy, what's his name, Khandana, who got it quick as a wink, he must have been really, really intelligent or something. Well,
remember, he was one of him and Siddhartha Gautama were practicing together, and 4 other guys. So it wasn't his first introduction to meditation, or he had been spending years developing his understanding, and what he needed was to hear the truth, and he was his mind was cultivated to the point where he was ready to integrate it and understand it, much like we do over time. I mean, it takes, you don't just develop this all at once.
So we're not necessarily stupid because we don't get as quickly as Khandana?
No, we're not. Look at Ananda didn't awaken until a month after the Buddha passed, and he was there for nearly every one of the Buddha's teachings. And it's no reflection on Ananda, or it's just that's karma. That's karma unfolding. No, and you could say that in that way, karma relates to the level of conditioning that you have, and that is there. Not conditioned minds aren't the same across the planet. In other words, there's different levels of conditioning. Just everybody's life experience is different. It can't be any different than that. But that doesn't. But every human being can awaken. It just takes a little bit of time. The length of time it takes to awaken. I'm not making a prediction for anyone, but the length of time it takes to awaken is determined by the level of kshanti, patient forbearance, wholehearted engagement with the Dhamma. Awakening is determined by that more than anything else. And so that gets to what it gets to what I just talked about. For one thing, right intention or intention is karma. Intention is right intention is the intention to recognize and abandon craving and clinging. Craving and clinging initiates dukkha. Karma is the ongoing experience of dukkha. And what is the cessation of karma? From the cessation of contact comes the cessation of karma. And how does one experience the cessation of contact? How does one experience the cessation of contact? You might say you're going to get it from memory, rather.
It's part of the whole chain of dependent origination. You have to break that chain.
Yeah, and how do we do that?
By cessation of clinging.
How do you break the chain? What's the path?
I don't know the whole each step by step.
No.
But you have to cease clinging.
Yeah. That's what the cessation of contact through the Noble Eightfold Path. The question, and how does one experience the cessation of contact, is also so important, because it points to that we will have the experience, and that we should have the experience. That it's important to know that we brought it to cessation. How do we know it? A lasting mind of calm and peace. I think that's as far as I wanted to go. No. This is interesting. I've had a little bit of a discussion on this Tuesday night too. A fool and a wise person are both characterized by their actions. It is through the actions of one's life that reveals the fool or the sage. We had someone here was a little bit upset at the use of the word fool. Of course, this is just, we're describing a condition. Someone who acts foolishly is a fool. It just describes their behavior, just like someone that acts with great wisdom is a sage. It's not elevating one person over another, although that was what came up. It's just pointing out a condition, a present condition. A fool and a wise person are both characterized by their actions. It is through the actions of one's life that reveals the fool or the sage. Again, pointing at karma means actions. If we have engaged with the Dhamma, we found someone, we've engaged in the true Dhamma, let's put it that way. We found someone, or we found the teachings of the Buddha, and we've started developing it. And we start noticing our life is improving. We're noticing the cessation of karma. And it's important to notice that. The Buddha teaches that. But that's how it's experienced. We know we're headed in the right direction. The fool engages in three things: bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, and mental misconduct. Again, pointing back to in thought, word, and deed. In thought, word, and deed, the fool continues his karma in a negative way. Continues ignorance. The sage engages in three things: good bodily conduct, good verbal conduct, and good mental conduct. Look at the simple difference between the two. If I'd rather not be a fool, but be a sage, according to an awakened human being, a guy who should know, I need to act with good behavior. And how do I do it? Well, I can look at what is right speech, right action, right livelihood, because it's that clear and that direct. I can look at the 5 hindrances, because if I can manage to avoid those, it's the same thing. I can engage with the paramitas and the great perfections of behavior. Again, these all develop from developing the Eightfold Path. Thus, friends, train yourselves as a sage in thought, word, and deed. How would a sage train himself? With the Eightfold Path. Yeah, thank you. So I hope we've gone from the general understanding of karma to what a useful understanding of karma as it fits within the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Karma is seen as a reward and punishment is just a way of excusing away our own responsibility for what's occurring, that it's someone else is making me feel this way, or it's some system acting on me that brought this misfortune.
Or a continuation of self-loathing.
Yeah, well, the self-loathing is really the underlying common human condition that's unnoticed. And one of these days I'll give a couple of talks on that, because it really, self-loathing is an aspect, is a useful aspect to continue to ignore our own ignorance. I'm just not up to it. I'm just not good enough. You might not be good enough. I know now, it's taken me 63 years. I know today was opening day. I know I'm not going to be good enough to play center field for the Yankees. It's just the way it is. There was a time in my life where that was quite a distraction, though. So I thought I might. Any questions about this, about karma?
Say the contact thing again.
I don't remember exactly what it is.
Please.
My pleasure. And what is the cessation of karma? From the cessation of contact comes the cessation of karma. And how does one experience the cessation of contact? Through the Noble Eightfold Path. Remember, Diane, he's not talking about not having any physical senses post-awakening. It's contact with the outside world rooted in ignorance, rooted in wrong view. That's the problem. And that's all that we're talking about. The Buddha's not describing life post-awakening, because why would he? We'll have it. We'll have that experience. But if we want to develop the Dhamma, it's at that point of contact that we can. And it's always like that. The Dhamma is always here. It's always present. The refined mindfulness that the Buddha talks about is just that allows us to be with our life, be present with our life as our life unfolds, even when it's unpleasant, because we are now well concentrated and we have a framework of the Eightfold Path to not have aversion to the unpleasantness of life, or to lose our minds when we win the lottery. Something good happens. They're both extremes of wrong view. Any other questions? No? Okay. We're going to get into rebirth, the second part of this chapter, this coming week, next week. And we might spend 2 weeks on it. Hopefully I'll finish up a rather long article that cites 3 or 4 suttas. I think I'll have it done by next week. If not, I'll make something up. But we're gonna get into rebirth next week. But karma and rebirth are almost 2 sides of the same coin. We'll get into that a little bit deeper next week. I think that's it. We'll finish with metta as we always do. So find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And give me a moment to find it. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing and gladness in its safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from, from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.